We have seen her all across pop culture ever since her first solo comic in 1941. Being arguably one of the most popular superheroes of all time, she's been making appearances in various adaptations, including shows, films, and comics, but not every single one of these has done her mythos justice. If you haven't already figured out who we're talking about via these visuals, today we'll be talking about Wonder Woman, and specifically a comic that I believe best encapsulates Diana's mythos, Wonder Woman Volume 2. Instead of naively following Steve due to her infatuation, Rucka says that he intends to focus on her curiosity and sacrifice, and quote, "She leaves because she wants to see the world and somebody must go and do this thing, and she has resolved it must be her to make the sacrifice. If she does that because she's fallen for a guy, I believe that diminishes her heroism." With this said, I'll be explaining why this comic accomplishes the simple feat of nailing her mythos, her universal love for humanity, and how this love translates through her relationships. Today we'll be focusing on three particular relationships: her relationship to Themyscira, her relationship to her mother, and her relationship to Steve Trevor. With this in mind, let's get into analyzing specific panels that strengthen her mythos. It's key to note that Themyscira and its people are vital to Diana's identity, and though Peter Coogan defines a superhero's identity as the codename in the costume, Wonder Woman Volume 2 seeks to explore deeper elements of Diana's personality through the relationship she had on the island. Diana may be known for protecting the world, but Themyscira was a literal safe haven for her, and continues to resonate as a part of her identity throughout the comic. But this comic does not disregard this land once Diana leaves. It fills in the holes of what happened on the island during the centuries without men, and how the women lived, loved, and developed, something the past comics haven't done. As immortals, it would be astonishing to find out that none of them fall in love, but Rucka indicates that there has in fact been romantic love on the island between the women, including Diana herself. On pages 95 and 96, Diana and Steve are seen having a cathartic moment where he recognizes her individual sacrifices for him and the rest of the world. During this conversation, the color scheme of the background, though subtle, includes the colors of the bisexual flag: purple, pink, and blue. Diana has love on the island, not just from the island as a whole, but truly romantic love. This side of Diana is not illustrated in past comics that typically showcase her as a naive girl who falls in love with the first man she sees. So Steve's acknowledgement of sexuality continues to alter the audience's outlook of her. She's further seen being romantically experienced, emphasized here, an interlocking of Diana and Steve's panels, which we'll get into later in the video. Some Amazon women are gossiping about Diana, saying, "I thought she and Kaisha, and Megara and Avril, I don't even know," highlighting that she has been involved with multiple women to the point where it's unclear which woman she's with. These 2 pages serve not only to further stress the bond between Steve and Diana, but to also stress the ties she has to her home. For centuries, Diana spent her life being nurtured as well as loved by these women. This bond that the Amazon women have is a core element to Wonder Woman. This new element of romantic love Rucka implements furthers her connection to Themyscira that she ultimately sacrifices for the greater good, protecting mankind from the destructive war of Ares. Now getting into the relationship between her and her mother, Hippolyta, the queen of Themyscira, is the catalyst for the confidence and power Diana is instilled with in order to protect humankind. Hippolyta trains her daughter for countless years, practices with her, and loves her unconditionally. An even better dynamic is created between Wonder Woman and her mother, because in past comics Diana was discouraged from leaving the island and losing her immortality, for the fear that her mother would never see her again. And this theme continues, but with less hesitance from her mother. Though we typically see her mother being unsupportive of her curiosity beyond Themyscira, this further emphasizes the loving bond between the two through evidence of her mother treating her as an equal. Here you can see that the readers are made highly aware of the severity of the conversation through the serious dialogue introduced by her mother. Through the use of moment-to-moment transitions, the dialogue is focused on by the reader rather than the actions within the illustrations. In his article Understanding Comics, Scott McCloud explains that moment-to-moment requires very little closure. Due to this lack of closure, the reader is consumed by an emotional moment between a mother and her daughter, rather than using their imagination to piece together the different panels. Combined with the repetition of she here, you can see that the scene continues to confirm the faith her mother has in her as an individual, and the fact that Hippolyta is aware of Diana's fate to be the champion of the Amazons. Even with Hippolyta's support, the comic's pacing of these panels through moment-to-moment transitioning illustrate her hesitance to send her daughter into a world full of war. Even though she knows that her daughter is the key to protecting men from the threat of the powerful and destructive Ares, it would only be fitting that a mother would not be thrilled to send their daughter to a jarring war and to never come back, but nevertheless, she knows it's necessary. Diana has a lot to live up to, not only as the princess of Themyscira, but the protector of humankind that the gods created her for. To add to Diana's prophecy, you can see here that the organization of the middle panels, arranged like stairs, can enact a sense of responsibility that Diana is stepping up to. Diana is rising up to her destiny to be Wonder Woman, the protector of mankind. Her mother is aware of her importance, and Diana is aware of her mother's sacrifice. This understanding between them fortifies their love for each other that continues even when they're separated. Now to Steve Trevor. The relationship Diana has with Steve Trevor from the very first moment they acknowledge each other is special to Wonder Woman's mythos that transcends throughout centuries of her comics. Whether romantic or father-like, in every comic he serves as a foil. They're both the key to protecting humanity from war, and Rucka's adaptation is consistent in portraying their differences, but it does a great job of showing the similarities as well, which is another element this comic emphasizes purposefully. Their lives are typically contrasted, but a sense of sameness creates a new bond between the two. Seen here, the combination of 2 consecutive pages in the comic create a continuation of panels that weave between Diana and Steve's everyday life, before they've even been introduced to each other or are even aware of their separate worlds. From left to right, starting with Steve then Diana repeatedly going back and forth between their different lives, the audiences can see the stark differences between their portrayals. Diana's panels give the readers a sense of belongingness. She's celebrated, loved, and included. These such characteristics are not shared on Steve's end, and inversely, he is illustrated to be utterly alone, something we don't see from Diana paralleling until her last panel at the bottom of the second page. The sense of time the audience experiences between their panels are clearly short, one-off moments that give insight into her past, but Diana's last panel gives a sense that she has and will be looking off into the distance for a very long time. Through the long and tall shapes of the entire top row panels that weave, the audience gets short snapshots of parts of their lives, but when it transitions to the 2 lower panels of Diana, the audience gets a sense of spaced-out tranquility and longing. Her last panel bleeds off onto the page, and McCloud describes this as a bleed. When bleeds are used, when a panel runs off the edge of the page, this effect is compounded. Time is no longer contained by the familiar icon of the closed panel, but instead hemorrhages into timeless space. Even though it may seem like Diana feels like she belongs on Themyscira through the visualization of the top right of panels, this ending panel that bleeds without borders is essentially her heart bleeding out. She truly feels out of place and longs for adventure. As the youngest on the island, in the desire to see what is outside of the island, she parallels Steve looking into the distance away from the crowd. Just as Steve is the first man to step foot in Themyscira, Diana is the first Amazon to step foot out of it, reifying the way that they foil each other. Throughout this comic, Greg Rucka creates new dynamics between Diana and other characters in ways that develop a once surface-level need to protect people into something more. Diana doesn't go to America with Steve Trevor and forget about her home and its people. She continues to love them from afar and to protect them as she protects the rest of the world. I hope you guys enjoy this comic as much as I did, and don't forget to like and subscribe.